looking for a spouse yourself or thinking about marriage, or you are looking for one of your children. Let's see. Okay, so Islamic perspective. The famous ayah in Surah Ar-Rum, Surah 30, ayah 21. You've heard this one so many times. I'm just going to draw your attention to 3 key words in this ayah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and among his signs is that he created for you from yourselves mates, that you may come to them for sakina. Okay, and we're going to go over sakina in a bit. And he put amongst you mawadda and mercy, mawadda and rahmah, sorry. Verily in that are indeed signs for people who reflect. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this beautiful ayah is establishing the main goal of marriage is to have sakina. And sakina we translate it very loosely in English into serenity, tranquility, peace. This is what we're looking for in a marriage. And Allah, I interpret this, and he put amongst you mawadda and rahmah to mean that he is inviting us that the pillars, the 2 main ingredients for us to have sakina in the marriage is to actually have mawadda and to have rahmah. So now let me direct your attention to mawadda and rahmah specifically. Amongst the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is the name Al-Wadud, right? Anyone want to tell me what does Al-Wadud mean as the name of Allah? Yes. Friendly, loving, yes. Yes. And I'm going to draw your attention in the Arabic word, in the Arabic language, we use the word hub. Okay, hub, which means love. If we translate hub into English, it becomes love. Allah is not using love here. This is very important. Before I did my counseling and studied, I was naively assuming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used mawadda instead of love in this ayah because he basically knew that over centuries people are not going to marry for love. Okay, this idea for marrying for love is recent. Okay, it's only within the 20th century onwards. Before that, I grant you, some people got married for love, but that wasn't the main reason. There were other compelling reasons for getting married, including safety and security, including connecting families, including transferring money from one family to another, many reasons. But the idea of romantic love as the basis for marriage is a very recent phenomenon. So I naively assumed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, which is going to be universal for all times and all people, is not going to use the word love because it doesn't apply to all people, right? That's what I was assuming. Until I heard the explanation of Dr. Amr Khalid, of the meaning of the word wadud as the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he basically said, wadud is, Allah is very loving toward us. He loves us. He's friendly with us. And there is one condition to wadud too, which is it has to be in action. So it's not only a feeling. Allah is wadud with us through his actions with us. So if you come back to mawadda, which shares the same root of wadud, which is wood, then we can extrapolate and say, Allah is telling us, is sending us a very beautiful message here. He said, in order for you to have sakina in your marriage, I'm inviting you to do love in action. So he is inviting us to focus on our loving actions towards our spouses. So that's the first thing I want to draw your attention to. Next, the word of rahmah. What do you think the word of rahmah means? And I know we translate it into mercy, but give me more layers, more depth. What is the significance of rahmah? What do you think? When do you feel rahmah towards someone else? When do you feel it in your heart? when someone forgives you, so someone has harmed you, okay, and then before they forgive you, you're feeling upset and worried about your connection with them. And when they forgive you, you feel overflowing with rahmah. Okay, very good. What other situations where we feel rahmah? Yes. So when someone treats you with kindness and respect, okay, you also feel that rahmah in your heart. Okay. What else? Where else? Yes, Ahmed.
When you're in conflict with someone and you feel like you're right, but you choose mercy over justice and you just let it go.
And that's the relevant aspect of rahmah in this ayah. Absolutely. You feel rahmah a lot of times when you know the shortcomings of the other person and you choose to let go of them. You don't choose to dwell on them. Okay? What does Allah, the Prophet ﷺ, I'm going to remind you of another hadith. How did he tell us to treat our children? He said, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يُوَقِّرْ كَبِيرَنَا وَيَرْحَمْ صَغِيرَنَا. He said, he is not amongst us who does not treat our elders with respect and our younger people with rahmah, mercy. Why do you think we need to treat our younger people with rahmah? Because we are older, we understand their shortcomings, we understand that they don't have the full picture, so we treat them with rahmah. This is the invitation in this ayah. Don't be stuck on the shortcomings of your spouse. No, they are not perfect. You're not perfect yourself as a spouse. So have rahmah in your heart. So I'm inviting you from this beautiful ayah that we always talk about. The pillars of sakina in a marriage are two. Love in action, and it's about you. What are you doing? How are you expressing your love to your spouse? Okay? And the other one, the mercy. What kind of rahmah are you expressing with your spouse? Are you forgiving of their shortcomings? Okay? Moving on, and we're still doing Islamic perspective. And I'm so glad that Sheikh Muhammad is here. So Sheikh Muhammad, please give your input about what I'm going to say right now, okay? Because the first time, so let me read the hadith first. He whom Allah has blessed with a pious woman has been supported by Allah for half of his faith. Let him fear Allah in the other half. And this is narrated in At-Tabarani and Al-Hakim. Okay. Now, this is a significant hadith because you hear a lot of people saying in slang Arabic, they say الزواج نصف الدين. Marriage is half of faith. You hear a lot of people saying. A lot of our shuyukh say it also all the time. But there are some people who take that, misconstrue that to, and this is what happened. I got this young woman, like some 10 years ago, she came up to me and she's like telling me, what's going to happen if I don't get married? I said, nothing. If you don't get married, khalas, you don't get married. It's, khalas, part of your faith. And she's like, but the hadith says marriage is half of the deen, half of the faith. I'm going to lose half of my faith if I don't get married. So I want you to be careful. The full narrative of the hadith is basically saying that if you get married to a pious woman, then Allah is supporting you in half of your deen. It's not marriage per se is half of your deen. So let's be very clear on that because I get this misconception a lot. Okay? Marriage is not half of your deen. No. Allah is telling you, you get supported in half of your deen. And this is addressing the men, by the way. Okay? You get supported in half of your deen by marrying a pious woman. Sheikh Muhammad, any more feedback, please, about this hadith or this concept? Can we give him the mic, please?
I was just reflecting on that as well, subhanallah. But I mean, it says here that you know, we have, when it comes to our deen, we have the things that we have to do, the duties that we have to fulfill, and things that we have to avoid and stay away from. So, and when you are married to somebody that has, that is supportive, that is righteous, they're going to help you do that. So, you know,
We're going to primarily discuss the chapters
if somebody says
that we don't cover in class, that there's no overlap. So for example, there's an entire chapter that you're going to be reading about on wealth.
But we just I want to emphasize
an
the idea that
animal
because this is
falls
really
into a
prevalent
well and
among
dies.
young people, is like marriage is half of the faith.
Yeah, and it doesn't say, this idea that marriage is half of the faith, so if you're not married, you lose half of it. Of course, it's flawed.
Yes.
And it's a misconception that a lot of people have. You know,
Okay. Thank you. Jazakallah khair. Okay, so moving on. What to look for a wife. Again, you know this beautiful hadith. Okay, this is addressing the young men in our community, or any, you know, any man for that matter. A woman is married for 4 things. So the Prophet ﷺ is stating that the woman, that men usually seek 4 things when they're looking for a wife. Money, her lineage, her beauty, and for her faith. And then how does he end the hadith? By saying, okay, make sure that you focus on getting the one with the faith. Okay? Now, another misconception comes here, because I get young men in my office when they come to see me and we're talking about marriage. So I say, what are you looking for? And they say, we want someone with all 4. And I say, why? And they say, because that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. He said, no, the Prophet didn't say that. The Prophet said that there are 4 main reasons why what a man is looking for in a woman, and he's saying focus on 1. He's not saying you have to get all 4. Why is this a problem? Because nowadays we're into this culture of I need to be happy. And we're tying our happiness to some material things. These are all material. Money, lineage, and beauty, they're material things. Faith is not. Faith is intangible. But faith is the one that is going to actually work and, you know, support the marriage. So, moving on. What to look for in a husband. If you receive a proposal from a man of whom you approve his faith and his character. I want to emphasize this one because we forget it all the time. I'm coming back to it. Accept his proposal. If you do otherwise, turmoil and chaos will take place. I think it's a profound that the Prophet ﷺ, in addressing our young women, actually, and their families, is saying, really focus on character. It's not only about faith. Okay, because I get many young women, they come and tell me, well, if he's a good, pious brother, then everything is going to be okay. And unfortunately, it's not. Because character is as important, if not even sometimes more important, than their level of faith. Because through his character, that's what you're going to live with. So I'm not saying go marry someone who doesn't have Islam, is not faithful. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying put as much attention into the character, as much as you are putting on their level of faith. Moving on. Another beautiful idea that we get from our faith also is the issue of compatibility. So before eHarmony, okay, what is eHarmony doing basically? It's just telling you, go ahead and fill out in a survey, and we're going to find someone who's compatible with you. Before eHarmony, the Prophet ﷺ has already told us, be careful about who you're marrying into. You need to be compatible. He's telling you that already, because it's part of the foundation for harmony in marriage later on. In Arabic, we call it takafu. This is from the book Fiqh al-Sunnah, a very well-known scholar, Sayyid Sabiq, in his section or chapter about marriage. So he says, And what needs to be observed when contemplating marriage is that there is compatibility between the husband and wife in age, social standing, education, economic level, because similarities encourage continued intimacy and affection. What I'm going to propose to you is throughout the history over, centuries, we as a community have changed our criteria for compatibility. So if you go back, I don't know what, like maybe 10 centuries back, one of the main criteria for compatibility would be what? Being similar in ethnic background, or having like maybe similarly from the same tribe or the same geographical area. It was important. But what happened is we took that and made that as part of our deen when it's not part of our deen. So we get families nowadays who are insisting that they're not going to marry their children except into the same ethnic group, into the same, geographical area. Completely wrong. Why? Because our social norms have changed. As an American Muslim community, do you know roughly how many ethnic groups do we have in our beautiful, vibrant community? Roughly, how many ethnic groups do you think we have? About 60 to 80, depending on how you're calculating. 60 to 80 ethnic groups in the American Muslim community. Our children who are born and raised in the US are not Pakistanis, are not Indians, are not, Arab, they're not Afghans, they are Americans. They're Americans with a very beautiful layer of Islam. So we need to respect that, and we need to let go of these artificial barriers that Allah and Islam did not put in place. Some of the very good, well-meaning, maybe, people before in previous centuries put them in place, but they're not part of the deen at all. Okay. So I'm going to actually get you now to divide into groups. We're going to do some group sharing, and then we're coming back and sharing. And after that, inshallah, we'll continue with the lecture, inshallah. This is the list our lovely brothers came up with. Listen carefully, sisters. Okay.
So we're not responsible for these answers. I'm just okay.
This is a collective
yes, it's
answer.
just, a group think, So
yes, that's what we were looking for.
Okay, good. Okay,
yes.
So faith was the first one, then character, mutual interests, blonde hair, loyal, affectionate, not materialistic, virtuous, maternal, wants children, educated, physical attraction, mental attraction, emotional attraction, flexibility or give and take, spiritual attraction, family-oriented or has good family, independence.
But two different things, by the way. Family-oriented is about the future family, right. And has good family has to do about her.
Comes from a good family.
Yeah.
Independence, same culture, seeker of Islamic knowledge.
Same culture?
Yes.
So what do we mean here by culture? How did you define culture in your group? Okay.
That's it, yeah.
So it could be, are we talking about ethnic culture here or just the general American culture? Well, we don't know. Okay, no problem. We're not going to stress over it. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. Seekers of Islamic knowledge, hijab, no tattoos, good friends, modesty, passionate, good cook, patient, humility, and intellect.
Thank you. Beautiful list. Let me tell you, this is one of the best lists I've come across from brothers.
Okay. Good deen, respectful, praised regularly, good role model, family-oriented, effective communicator, honest, dedicated to family and community, educated, has a degree, career, has a career, is goal-oriented, has a job, good relationship with his mom, understanding, follows the sunnah in raising children, a sense of humor, affectionate, supportive, emotionally, professionally, etc., intelligent, has a beard, compatibility, chemistry, healthy mentally and physically, sees marriage as a team effort, loyal, open-minded, masjid-going, contributes to society, involved in community, can control their temper, and that's underlined, doesn't drink alcohol, attractive, has good friends, has social skills, is confident, is emotionally intelligent, is adventurous, likes to travel, and mature.
MashaAllah. Again, another wholesome list. This is one of the best lists I've come across from sisters. This is a quote from a young European Muslim. I am not sure if it's a female or a male. We are the lost generation. We did everything right, took the best from the East and the West. We have a very global outlook, but now we can't find a marriage partner that suits us. And mainly the reason for that is because of we, the older people in the community, are putting a lot of barriers for our young people, unfortunately. Okay, moving on. Obstacles. I'm going to go through the list very quickly. The list. When I started doing this work, I used to ask people to come up with 10 characteristics that you are looking for in your prospective spouse, whether husband or wife. And then I began to recognize that the list itself is becoming an obstacle. Because what's happening is people are, when they are entertaining the idea of someone who's coming their way, they're looking at their list going like, okay, check, check, check. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not going to see them. Okay? So my invitation to you, be aware that your list is not one of the obstacles to you finding a spouse. And we're going to go over how to define what's a core criteria and what's a non-core criteria in a little bit. Where and how to find a spouse. Okay, that's a problem in our community. We talked about the segregation. Unfortunately, alhamdulillah, our centers are becoming much more inclusive, much more natural, if you will, in how we're interacting, but we still have a long way to go. Parents are one of the major obstacles in this process. I'm so sorry to say it to all of the parents here. Forgive me, and I'm not trying to insult you, wallahi. But I see it again and again and again in my office. And their main, the main way they are an obstacle is by emphasizing, for example, a certain ethnic group, a certain background, a certain education, a certain financial, status, and then, putting that burden on the children and say, I am not going to approve of this particular person because, this and that. And then the young person is stuck. Do I go against my parents' wishes to marry the person that I think is actually good for me? Or do I follow my parents' wishes and, I'm full of resentment and anger towards them? That's what I'm seeing. Sometimes you have every right to say no. Okay, there are very valid reasons, but many of the situations that come to my office, the parents don't have a valid reason. Seriously. It's really sad. And it breaks my heart, especially for the young sisters. Cultural stigmas, how, some ethnicities look down on another ethnicity. Another stigma we have is the age gap. Like they say, oh, if the difference between them is 10 years or more, no, we're not going to marry. Or if the woman is older than the boy, is like, no, you cannot marry her, she's older than you. All of these ridiculous ideas that have no place in Islam. Romantic love, I talked about this one. I'm warning you. Please don't wait for the Hollywood movie to happen in your life. Please. Okay? Don't wait to fall in love. Please. My invitation is to consider everyone that's coming your way. Okay? After you talk to them, you refuse them. But don't refuse them before you talk to them, as long as the core criteria is in place. Again, we're going to, inshallah, talk about that in a minute. But if the core criteria is in place, some of the things you're looking for are not there, don't just say no. No. Please sit, talk, get to know them. Reason I'm saying that is this is how you're going to know also what you're looking for. Okay? If you are just waiting for someone perfect, and you're not going to get to know anyone unless that person is perfect, you are not really knowing exactly what's going to work for you. So open that door for yourself. And I'm inviting the parents to also be flexible and more easygoing in allowing their children to get to know someone from the other gender. So I'm not saying you go do it behind your parents' back. No. I'm saying let the parents know, I'm interested in this person. I want to get to know them. You want to begin the process by parents meeting. Maybe depends on the family. Some families do it this way. Some families, they don't want to meet until the first maybe interaction and between the young people, and they see that maybe they're compatible, and then we move forward. But open that door. We have a marriage problem in our community. Unless we change how we are working about it, doing it, or dealing with it, it's going to continue to be a problem. So please don't wait to fall in love. That doesn't mean you should marry someone you are disgusted by. Okay? No, there should be some kind of attraction. But it doesn't need to be the attraction that you see in the movies. Some people are going to get it. And that would be your rizq. Okay, that's part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined for you. But you do not have to have that in order to have a successful marriage. No. Successful marriage means you can be companions. You can be partners. And you do not need the overwhelming, intense romantic love for that to happen. Another obstacle is money. Again, because of whether the expectation of the spouses or the families. Like, we talked about mahr. They're looking for a lot of mahr, what have you. Seeking perfection. I think I talked about this enough. Like waiting until you get the perfect person. Non-traditional women and traditional men. This is a big issue. One of the major changes in our community, in the American Muslim community, has been that our young sisters are, mashallah, very ambitious, very motivated, driven, and they're highly educated. So that means that many of them want to be career women, and they want to be also mothers and spouses. That doesn't sit sometimes very well with the husbands. Sometimes husbands are expecting, a sister just to sit home and not have that identity as a career woman. So we're having this is happening, this is causing a problem. On another level also is because sometimes the woman earns more than the husband, which causes another problem, okay? If you as a sister are earning more than your husband and you cannot respect your husband, that's not going to be a good marriage. Okay? You need to have respect. No matter what's the educational level of your spouse, is it less than you, the earning potential, or how much income he is making is less than you. If you cannot respect your husband, don't get into that marriage. Brothers not going after girls who follow the rules. I talked about this one. This is happening a lot, unfortunately. Gender segregation in the Muslim community, we talked about. Bucket list is basically what we're hearing nowadays from young people, which is a reflection, by the way, of a trend in the larger American community, which is, why get married? I'm fine, no, the bucket list is basically, I'm going to get married after I do 1, 2, 3, 4. After I fulfill all of those, then I'm going to go and get married. And in that process, they may miss some really great candidates for marriage. Like, for example, a woman who decides she wants to become a doctor. We see this very commonly. So she's not going to be thinking of marriage, period, until she's done with her training. By the time she's done training as a doctor, she's older. The pool available for her is actually way less, okay, smaller, and then she gets into a panic. So my invitation from this one is, if you are ready for marriage, and you come across a very good candidate, okay, consider that. Don't wait for your life to follow a perfect track, and marriage is like stop number 5 in your journey. No, just be open. Okay. And the last one here is, who needs to get married? I'm fine the way I am. Why bother? In the US, there is a growing percentage of single people who don't want to get married, period. And social scientists are studying them. They're actually, and they call them singletons, like single, you know. And these people, basically, they say, why bother? You know, I'm fine the way I am. I don't need the burden and the responsibilities of marriage. I have fun when I want. I have sex when I want, because that's the culture we're living in, is I can just have sex without marriage, no problem, right? And I'm just living life according to the way I want to live it. And I'm hearing this also in our community, unfortunately. So these are the obstacles to marriage in our community. Men, I'm going to go through this one very quickly. Ahmed, yes?
On your bucket list, you mentioned if you are ready. Are you going to define readiness in this, or is that like a different workshop?
I think I'm going to touch on that when I talk about the core criteria. Yeah, inshallah. But remind me when I get to that to maybe expand a little bit on that. Yeah. Okay, so men, these are things we hear from young brothers in our community about what they're looking for in a spouse. American on the outside, Arab on the inside. A Barbie in a burqa. A trophy wife. I need to show her around. People need to look at her and go like, oh, how lucky I am that I have her as my wife. Tall and thin, gorgeous, career woman. We're hearing more and more about husbands who want their wife to work with them, which is a reflection of the economic situation that is happening nowadays. Life is difficult, it's tough. So in many situations, you need two income in order to support a family. And if that is what you're going to do, I'm just going to caution you to be paying very careful attention to when the children come along. So please make it a point that you or your spouse are, really alternating care for the children. Okay? One of my pet peeves is putting children in daycare. Okay? So please avoid that as much as you can. I know sometimes you don't have a choice, but put the children at the focus of your life. Okay, Arabic speaking, I've heard this so much. When someone calls me and I say, so what are you looking for? And they're like, she has to be Arabic speaking. And I'm like, do you know that only 20% or less of all Muslims globally are Arabs? 80% and more of all Muslims in the global ummah, okay, are not Arabs. Okay? So when we're saying Arabic speaking, we're excluding 80% of our ummah. Let's be aware of that and careful. Fair-skinned and a family and tribe, which we talked about already. Okay, so those are the things that we hear from, brothers. Now, what are women looking for? Handsome and tall. He has to be a Hollywood star. Soulmate. We hear this word a lot from girls. He has to be my soulmate. He has to be my best friend. No, he doesn't need to be your best friend. No. Your best friend is your best friend, okay? Your husband is your husband, okay? So let's forget this best friend business. You can have a beautiful marriage, and your husband is not your best friend. Seriously, okay. Sweeps me off my feet. They want to feel what we're seeing in the media. We want the white horse and the Disney carriage and, okay, he needs to be a professional. So all these young brothers who are non-professionals, they don't get married. Haram, makes good money, active brother in the community, good Muslim, and I'm reminding you here, sisters, please, the character is very important. There are many people who are doing the best prayers, the best fasting, they're very active in the community, but their character, their presence with you in your own house is not going to be the best for you. You're going to be miserable. Okay? So please focus and pay attention to the character. How is this person dealing with you? How is this person dealing with his family? How is this person dealing with your own family? How is this person dealing with other people outside the family? Extremely important. Okay. Stay near my family. I'm getting this from sisters a lot, by the way. They get a candidate, and it requires that they need to move across state, or even, across the U.S., or even across the Atlantic, or where have you, and immediately they say, no, I need to be next to my family. That is not a core criteria. Okay? Staying next to your family. Your family, of course, loving, and you love them, you can go visit them. But don't make that as a condition for whoever you're going to marry. Okay. Let's compare the traditional norms and what's happening nowadays. Norms, when it comes to marriage. So traditionally, there was a need for the consent of parents and family. Nowadays, our young people are looking to have an individual choice, and they are not accepting forced marriages. Traditionally, ethnicity and race were a very critical factor in choosing a spouse. Nowadays, in the American Muslim community, our young people are thinking of gender and race equity. Traditionally, the cultural morality was of no premarital sex. Definitely, Islamically speaking, there is no place for premarital sex. However, in our community, we are having people who are actually doing that. Doesn't mean it's right, but let's be realistic. Let's be on the ground. This is also sometimes happening. Man's ability to provide and the woman's ability to take care of the home, that was the traditional view of gender roles, okay? Now we're changing into both need to be educated. Sometimes we're even thinking that both need to work and support the family, and even taking it a step further, that both are going to take care of the children and both are going to take care of the household. I can guarantee you from the woman's side, there is a lot of expectation with that. The engagement or getting to know one another is traditionally was done very supervised. Okay, so the spouses were not given a chance even to talk by themselves. I'm not talking in an empty room, no, public place and sit and talk. This wasn't allowed. And even sometimes, as you know, in some traditions, the husband and the wife didn't see each other until the day of the marriage. Nowadays, what's happening is we are coming up with so many different ideas about how we're going to get to know one another. Okay? There are so many ways going on. But still, I have parents who are very, traditional about how they want it to happen. I had a young man call me. So he met someone at work. Both of them are Muslim. They met at work. They worked together. So they admired each other. They wanted, the process to begin of, maybe getting married. So the families now got involved. And he told me that when he went to meet the bride's family, they wouldn't allow her to come down. She's working with him. He sees her every day at work, okay? And he was like struck dumb. What are we doing? Who are we fooling here, I see her. Just because you didn't allow her to come down doesn't mean I am not talking to her at work. So let's be real, okay? Let's also be real in terms of what does Islam say? Islam did not say don't talk to each other. He didn't say that. And we're going to talk about the engagement in a minute. Islam didn't say don't see each other. On the contrary, the Prophet ﷺ encouraged Al-Mughira to go and look at his prospective wife. He told him, go see her, go look at her. And he went and he hid behind the bush So she didn't know he was looking at her. He was hiding behind the bush, and he's looking at her. And what did the Prophet tell him? He said, because when you see each other, when you see her, that is a better omen for you having a connection. Okay? That's what Islam says. It doesn't say hide the woman behind the door and the wall and, God forbid, he sees her. Okay. Traditionally, the idea of love was always thought of as is going to happen after marriage. Nowadays, we are looking for love before marriage. Okay, moving on. So, why are we having those changes? What's happening? I'm sure it's not a surprise for you. Women's lives have changed more than men's have thus far. The shift of women into the workplace has not been accompanied by comparable change in men's roles inside the home. Studies indicate that although men have increased the amount of housework and childcare they do, an imbalance remains. These are some, if you will, ideas about, some of the changes we're seeing. So, marriage has to be good, or it's not worth trading their newfound independence for. This is how the people who are single are thinking about marriage. Why are they refusing marriage? Because they don't want to lose their independence. Women's rising power and changing expectations are impacting how the dynamic between man and woman happening in the marriage, and men are experiencing an existential crisis in the marriage. Why? Because they're coming into the marriage expecting to be treated in a traditional way, while the women have already changed. The women have changed the game, have changed the rules of the game, and men are still expecting it to happen the same way. Some statistics. The difference from 1970 to 2000 in the amount of housework, how much time was spent on housework. So there is a 70-minute reduction between 1970 and 2000. Why? Because of course, having more, appliances. Our life is easier. Expectations even in how to do housework has also changed. Between 1965 and 2012, men are doing more housework by half an hour. Okay, the change. And nowadays, husbands of stay-at-home wives are doing more housework than before. The difference between me, for example, and my mother's generation. My husband pitches in and does things at home. My father didn't do. That's a natural and, part of the changing norms in our lives. Okay, in child rearing, men are much more hands-on in terms of how they are taking care of the children. And what's interesting, that nowadays in the American community, the earning power, or how much a person earns, is defining who's going to be the primary caretaker. So it's no longer the gender, except if it's a choice. You have a lot of Muslim women who feel so strongly about taking care of their children. They feel it as, a responsibility that they want to do. So even if their earning potential is higher, they're opting to stay home and depend on the husband because they don't want to miss out on being with the children. But in the general American society, the earning power is determining who is taking care of the children much more than the gender. Sometimes there is no choice. I know a lot of Muslim families where the husband cannot find a job. That's the reality of the economy we're living, and the wife is the one who's working. It's not like something, sometimes it's beyond your control. Statistics about income. When men are earning more money, the buying decisions are done equally between husband and wife. This is, again, American society. When the woman earns more money in the marriage, she is making twice as much decisions, financial decisions. Okay? Islamically speaking, by the way, if, her money is her own, so she has that Islamic right to make, the decisions about how she wants to spend her money. Okay. This is an interesting paragraph. If you remember when women liberation started, what they were calling for is 50-50 divide in terms of responsibilities, in terms of everything. Nowadays, we're shifting. Women's liberation is shifting. It's no longer talking about 50. There are people who are still doing that, I know. But now we have a bigger picture, okay? So it's not about 50-50 anymore. It's about who does what better. And let's work together as a team, because this family will not thrive without us being a team. So the notion of perfect equality in all tasks, work, wages, and power was never realistic. Men and women, especially when they form a household, are complex creatures with individual gifts and needs. This is an invitation for your own family, is your own, if you will, dynamic. You get to decide how you're going to do it, how you're going to create it, how you're going to divide the task, as long as there is respect. There's respect, there is appreciation, there isn't any, commands and unrealistic, demands. So let's keep that in mind. Another statistic, this is also recent, 57 of all college graduates nowadays are women. More women than men are graduating college, which translates into what I told you earlier about a gap, a divide between the educational and earning income between our young sisters and our young brothers. Here we go. This means that they are less likely to find men, equal men in terms of age and education and income. For every 100 unmarried women, we have 88 unmarried men. That's the sad reality. Okay, now we're moving into another, we're almost done with the statistics. This is a study I did when I was doing my master's degree. So basically, I interviewed 751 participants. My focus was studying the marital trends within the American Muslim community. I asked many questions and then came up with interesting data. About 50% of the participants were second generation. What does second generation mean? It means that the parents are the ones who emigrated. The second generations were the first generation to be born and raised in the US. So some of my statistics were 17% of participants who were 18 to 25 years of age were married. Like most of the participants who are in this age group were unmarried, only 17%. So this goes against the notion that in our community young people marry early, okay? That this doesn't prove it. When we looked at participants who were over 25 years of age, we got to about 75% of them were married. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because we need to start shifting how we think about when our young people need to get married. Because I get some families who start panicking, especially when their girls are like 25. Oh my God, she's not married. Oh my God, she's never going to get married. Oh my God, oh my God. So basically what this is telling us is our community is moving towards a later age in marriage. And it's happening over the age of 25 for both men and women. I asked the question, what for the people who were not married, I said, why aren't you married? Okay? And I gave them several reasons. So I'm going to read them to you in order of, the percentage. The number one reason why someone wasn't get married is, I didn't find my soulmate yet. The Hollywood syndrome, okay? 25% of those who were not married said, I'm not married because I didn't find my soulmate. A problem. This takes us back to the romantic love issue that I talked to you about. The next reason was difficulty meeting prospective spouses, which we as a community are contributing to. We need to do more work in that. I had one as other, and then I didn't really collect the reasons for the other, 16 or 17%. 12% said not interested in marriage at the moment. 10% said focus on my career. About 9% said financially not ready. About 8% had mixed reasons, and 2% said they are emotionally not ready. Okay, so I kind of shared a lot of statistics, boring statistics, and a lot of challenges. And now we're going to go ahead and shift into solutions and invitations for how to change, the dynamic we're seeing, inshallah, bismillah. Any questions so far before I move on? Nope, okay. That's my number one invitation. Before you get married, you need to know yourself. Very important. Know who you are. Know, what is your value system. Know what makes you angry, by the way. This is one of the most important critical factors that I invite everybody to, do self-awareness around. Anger. When do you get angry? Why do you get angry? How do you respond when you are angry? And the reason being is no one is going to make you angry as much as your spouse, because you live with that person 24/7. So be aware of what triggers your anger. And when you're getting to know someone, if you're feeling irritated with this person in this process, don't dismiss it. Don't say, nah, it will get better with time. No, please dig into it. See if you can work with this other person about the cause of irritation. If you can't work out the irritation, this is a red flag. Okay? When you're getting to know someone, you need to be mostly feeling, I'm not going to say on cloud 9, but at least, peaceful, content, excited to get to see them, happy to be with them. When you leave them, you feel good. Most of the time, because sometimes you're going to get upset with them, you're going to get angry with them. And those are going to be your test to see, can you work it out? Can you actually come together, both of you, and say, well, when you did this, I got upset and this triggered me, and see how they react. Because their reaction to you asking about why you were upset and angry is an indication for you whether this marriage is going to work or not. So please don't dismiss your irritation, okay? Don't also ever tell yourself when you're getting to know someone, oh, this will change after we're married, because it's not going to change. Most probably it's going to become worse. So if you're not going into the marriage knowing exactly those shortcomings and being okay with them, okay? Because nobody is perfect. You're going to marry someone who is not perfect. But I always tell my young people, the person that you need to marry is the person you can tolerate their shortcomings. That you can accept it, you can deal with it, you can live with it. That's the person you want to marry. Because those shortcomings are going to come up every day in your life. So know yourself, extremely important. And these are different areas for you to kind of assess where you are before you look for someone else. Where are you in education and social class? Where are you in expectations about life? Where are you in terms of your physical appearance and what you're looking for in the other person? What are your life goals? Are you going to be on two different ends of the spectrum with life goals? Or are you on the same page? You don't need to be exactly on the same page, but you need to be somewhat, similar. Faith and values. and the family, and then the personality characteristics, they need to be compatible, they need to mesh. Again, your key to knowing that is, do you feel good when you are with this person? When you separate, do you feel that, you're leaving with a good energy? Or are you drained after you sit with this person? That's really, a lot of people, don't pay attention to how they feel. That's really, one of the major problems that we have nowadays. And for those of you who want to really learn more about emotions, I'm inviting you to go and watch Inside Out, the Disney movie. This is one of the best Disney movies that was ever made. It's really based on scientific information, and I really, if you haven't watched it, please go watch it. And take messages from it. Take ideas from it, apply it in your life. And if you haven't watched it and you go watch it, I want you to pay attention to the dinner table scene. Okay? That is important, because the dinner table scene basically shows or highlights exactly what happens when we have tension in marriage. Because it shows the inner dialogue, how the inner dialogue in the daughter is responding to the inner dialogue in the father. Beautiful. So please go watch it. Okay. Inside Out, the movie? Was that the question? Yeah, Inside Out, the movie. Yeah. Okay, some of the personality characteristics that cause problems, and I see it in my office. So there are way many more than these. I'm just giving you a sample. Social interactions, in terms of like introvert and extrovert, you have one that's very social, the other one is like, no, I just like to be home, and Now that doesn't mean that an introvert and an extrovert cannot get married. They can, but they have to figure out how are they going to deal with that divide. How are they going to compromise, okay? The extrovert needs to be okay with the introvert staying home sometimes and not going with them and not feeling threatened that, their spouse is not with them. And the introvert at the same time needs to be vocal about what, works for them. Sometimes they need to go out with the spouse just for the sake of the spouse, because we're working for the marriage. We're working for the team. So it's not about me being selfish here. It's about working together and sacrificing for the other person. Order and cleanliness, one of the major divides also. You have somebody who's orderly and someone who's just like a big, messy person. Conflict resolution. Someone who wants to solve the problem in the moment when they're angry, and the other person needs to withdraw and calm down before they can talk. Okay? Different conflict resolutions, styles. Language used. What I mean by that is some people, when they get angry, they use foul language. And the other person is very insulted and very hurt, and because they never used that, they've never heard that before. So the style of speaking could also become a trigger for tension in the family. Agreeableness, in terms of like some people are easygoing, some people are very rigid and demanding and commanding. Motivations. Some people are driven, some people are just, no, I'm happy the way I am, I don't want to do any more. Now, again, I'm emphasizing to you, it doesn't mean that you have to be exactly the same along these divides. What you need is to be able to work it out with respect and dignity and figure out a compromise. Some of the values and rules for life that come into my office where spouses are having conflict is religious beliefs and practices. For example, I get sometimes couples where one of them prays, the other one doesn't pray. And the spouse that prays is usually feeling responsible for the spouse that doesn't pray. And so they're very upset and angry. How come they're not praying? And, what kind of role model are you doing for the children? Now, the scholars, well, Sheikh Muhammad is here. Okay. Sheikh Muhammad, according to what I know, okay, the scholars say that the spouse is not responsible for the religiosity of the other spouse, correct? He's like, I don't know how to answer that one. To say something, yes. Yeah, but they are not responsible if that person doesn't listen and doesn't follow through. Exactly. So everybody's responsible for their own action. You know, the ayah, the beautiful ayah in the Quran, no soul is beholden for the sins of another. 5 times in the Quran. 5 times. It hasn't. Why did Allah mention this 5 times in the Quran? Because it's a significant, profound principle. So, anyway, yes, Sheikh. Were non-believers, like Prophet Lut and Prophet Nuh. Yes, the wives were not believers. The issue here is, if there is a divide, to work through it, okay? Not to be demanding and come and say, no, you have to be this way. No, okay? And also to ask the question, what can I tolerate? Like, let me give you an example. Someone, for example, a couple who's married and one of the spouses, for example, I'm just giving you a random example, decided to start drinking alcohol in the house. This person is getting drunk, is, becoming angry, and, and just like really bad situation. So the other spouse can decide, if this is not working for me, then it's time for divorce, okay? So the tolerance level, what can I tolerate, is important in these issues, okay? And what is it impacting is important in these issues as well. Okay, gender roles, again, we talked about how we are moving from a very traditional view of gender roles into a more equitable, more egalitarian, if you will, gender roles. So again, we need to discuss, what are you expecting, what am I expecting, and come to the same page. Money issues also cause problems in how they spend money. Like, I get some spouses like, oh my God, she spends money on, she wants to buy, a brand name purse, and I can't allow her to do that. I'm like, you know what, let's figure out a compromise. A brand name purse for her is very important. Okay, so how can we work the issue with a budget in place? Because we're not asking you to go in debt so that she gets her brand name purse. But how are we going to work it together? Okay. In-laws also cause a lot of problems. I get that in my office a lot. And one of the main reasons why this becomes a problem is, I'm so sorry to tell you, unfortunately, the husbands don't take a stand. And they don't set boundaries with their families. Just saying. Recreation, also differences in how they like to spend their leisure time, and then expecting that the other person has to be with them, also causes another tension point. Okay, moving on. This is now the core criteria that I was talking to you about. Remember how I told you I used to ask people to write the list, and then the list became an obstacle? Because I started seeing some items on the list that were non-core criteria, meaning they are not important, they're not necessary for a successful marriage. So I am inviting you, when you come up with your list, to look at, is it a core criteria, the items you have in your list, or is it not? So what are the core criteria? Number 1 is the religiosity level. This is important. Before you get into the marriage, okay, be okay with where each of you are in terms of the practice of faith. Don't expect, especially for the brothers, I get that. It's like, after I marry her, she's going to wear hijab. If you were marrying her without hijab, expect that she may not wear the hijab after you're married. You need to be okay with that. So no forcing any religious practices on anyone. Sisters also. Don't say, like, I get sisters sometimes who are like, he's not praying, but he's great, and I know I'm going to be, I'm just going to encourage him to pray. I had a young sister the other day, she called me, asking me about this man she's getting to know, and I said, so what do you like? She listed everything she likes. And then I said, what is it that you don't like? She said, my number 1 problem is that he doesn't pray regularly. I said, okay, stop here. If you're not okay marrying him, knowing he doesn't pray regularly, and that may continue, then you need to cut off the relationship right now. You may think in your ideal dream that you're going to be the motivator and the encourager, and you're just going to get him to pray regularly. And maybe you will. But there's a high possibility it's not going to happen. So don't marry him unless you are certain that you're going to be okay with him continuing not to pray regularly. So religiosity level, in terms of like, I'm not asking you to look for a specific perfect level. No. I'm asking you to look for what works for you and to be okay with what you see in front of your eyes. The next one is the financial situation. Also, again, you need to assess that situation, whether for the sister, for the brother, and be okay with it. If you're not okay with it, then it doesn't work for you. You need to look somewhere else. Personality and character. And this one you're not going to know unless you actually sit and spend time with the person. So please make sure, whether you're a parent or a young person, that you have that space and you have enough time before you do the nikah, please, before you do the nikah, to get to know the person and meet them in several different spaces, like with your family, with his family, you know, out in public. Just get to really know them before you do the nikah. You're not going to know the personality without spending time with them. You're going to know it from small things, because life happens all the time, okay? No one can pretend all the time. If they're trying to hide something from you, it's going to come up. But you have to be there to see it. And with that, I'm also emphasizing face-to-face interactions. So for those of you who get to know one another through online, whatever, you know, the first thing after you have figured out that you like this particular person, the core criteria is in place, is to insist on meeting face-to-face. Skype is not enough. Skype is good, lovely, but Skype is not enough because it's a barrier. It hides, okay? You need to see them face-to-face and do it as frequently. You know, instead of spending money on the wedding, spend money on airplane tickets, on hotel rooms, so that you can actually travel, so you can see one another face-to-face. That's way more important than having a grand wedding. Yes?
So you're saying that the nurse can go to another state to meet the person?
Yes, and she can take someone from her family with her. I'm highly encouraging, wallahi, I'm talking to the parents here, okay? Maybe the first time the prospective brother comes over, I mean, in our community, we expect the brother to put more effort. So you expect the brother to come over to your city. Fine. Yes. Why? Especially, you know why? Because you really want to know that this brother is serious. I'm so sorry, brothers, because there are some brothers who are not serious. They're just playing around. So we want you to prove through your actions that you're really serious about this sister. We want you to do it in action. So we want you to come and fly over and prove to her that you're really seriously interested. But then I'm inviting you to consider going and visiting him in his state and going and seeing his house. Don't go by yourself, of course. Take someone from your family. I am dead serious. I'm not joking. How are you going to get to know this person? Especially if you don't know him from before in the same community. No one can tell you anything about the person, right? We no longer have our social networks that used to tell us, give us character reference. We don't have these anymore, okay? So we need to go after finding the information ourselves. We have to do our part. You cannot get married and go, oh my God, poor me, I got a lousy spouse because, you know, I didn't do my due diligence and I didn't do my work. No, please. worldview means how do they look at the world? How do they view, and I know this is a difficult concept to think, to understand, but, and it can be impacted a lot by Islam or the faith value. But like, are they optimistic or are they pessimistic? Okay, this is part of the worldview. Do they think of themselves as victims, as everything is happening to them and they don't have control? Or are they assertive and they go after what they want? Okay? That all goes under worldview. And you can feel it and sense it when you are interacting with a person. And the last one in the core criteria for me is there has to be some attraction. Again, it's not the Hollywood attraction. Okay? Some attraction. Non-core ideas or characteristics, physical features. So someone, I get some of the sisters, they tell me, he has to be tall. And I'm like, why does he have to be tall? And she's like, yeah, I can't imagine myself marrying a short person. I'm like, yeah, but that's not going to impact your marriage. I mean, the height of the person, okay? So physical features, as long as you have that some attraction, should not be a primary factor in you deciding who you're going to marry. Specific degrees, because we have this unfortunately in our community, we're so in love with physicians and engineers and lawyers, and everybody else doesn't have a degree. And those are not going to be also critical in whether the marriage is going to be good or not. Specific ethnicities, I think we've talked about this one enough. The young people, you guys are Americans, okay? So that's your identity now. Khalas, okay? Romantic love, I hope you're going to leave today with the understanding, let's not look for a romantic love, I hope. Location, be like focusing, he has to be in California, he has to be in here. No, okay, if you get a good candidate, just make it work. And living with parents. Like some sisters, they refuse to marry someone who feels responsible for his parents, and his parents are living, they have to live with him, and they go, no, I'm not going to marry him because his parents live with him, okay? And they refuse from the beginning. Give it a try. If things don't work out, then talk to the husband and say, this is not working out, we need another solution. But he is being responsible. He's taking care of his parents. That's the kind of husband you want to marry. The husband who actually respects his parents and takes care of his parents. I'm not saying he's going to dismiss you and you're going to be nothing. No, he's going to respect you too. But just because he's taking care of his obligations, we're not going to hold this against him. Yeah. So, core criteria, important for a successful marriage. Non-core criteria. So I want you to think of your list and divide it into these two columns. What's core and what's not core. Okay? If you get someone who has the core criteria, doesn't have some of the non-essentials, please, by all means, get to know him. And then decide if it's going to work out for you. Am I clear? Do you get my message clearly? I hope loud and clear. Okay? Because I want to open the door for more people to meet each other. Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? It's not working? But can everyone hear me? Okay. But what happened is, okay, so at the beginning she's like, okay, I'll live with your parents. They had a great relationship, but the parents were causing the problems. And so what happens is when they tell the husband, I don't want to live with your parents anymore, the husband will say no. And almost in every single one of these cases, it ended in divorce.
Right. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And I don't know if you were here before.
Yeah.
When I said that the main problem with in-laws is that the husbands are not putting boundaries with the parents.
But when you said to give it a try, that's the problem. They'll give it a try, and the woman will say, this is not working out. The guy will say, no, we're going to be with like this forever, or we're going to get a divorce.
I'm hearing you. I hear you. I fully understand. And they may have regrets now, and they think, no, I shouldn't have married him, you know. But I'll tell you also, there are, on the other hand, there are other examples of women who refuse to marry the husband because of the living situation with his family. And the person would go and marry someone else. And after they live with the parents, sometimes doesn't work. The husband is assertive, is respectful, so he actually moves out. And then, you know, so they work it out. So I agree with you. There are husbands who are not going to be sensitive, understanding, compassionate towards the woman and her dilemma and her struggle. That is happening, but we also have husbands who do. So the question comes back to, again, because we have a marriage crisis here. If everything else is working for this guy, okay, all the core criteria are there, okay? I'm not saying that the core criteria is not there, okay, like he's not religious, he cannot provide for you, you don't mesh with him, and then he's asking you to live with his parents and you say, I'm going to give it a try. No. Core criteria in place, this is the only kind of sticking point. Give it a try. Give it a try. Okay? Okay. Yes, Malak.
What do you say? Doesn't work. What do you say about chemistry? The chemistry is not working.
So this is the attraction. This is what I meant here by attraction. Thank you for saying chemistry, because some people see it this way. There has to be some chemistry.
But on what basis you say there is chemistry or not? You have to meet the person to say there is no chemistry.
Exactly.
Give the chance.
Exactly. You cannot just sense it through Skype and chat and phone. Please.
Can you refuse based on description?
On what?
Description.
What do you mean?
If I say, for example, I have a person who is, for example, if she needs an Arab, Pakistani, or whatever, and I say, yes, I have an Arab, for example, for whatever he wants, and the height, the education, give it a try, and just contact her and see. And they say, no, thank you very much. And the same thing happened with the other side. From description, they say, no, thank you very much, without even giving the chance to meet that person, which it matches their criteria on paper.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you say to that?
That's, I hope, what I have been trying to say the whole session today. What have I been saying? What do you think I have been saying? I want to hear it from you. What have I been saying? Be open-minded. What else? Sit together. What else? Yes. Meet them, and then say no, please. Don't say no before you meet them, please. As long as the core criteria is in place. I'm not saying go and meet left and right. No. If it's important for you that someone is religious, don't go and meet someone who's drinking alcohol, and you know that. Why? No, core criteria is in place. Meet them. If it doesn't work, then say no, please. Okay? Yes?
How much do you think dur is enough? I don't need that.
How much do I think?
Mahr is enough.
Oh, I cannot answer that. Because I'll tell you, we have different cultural norms within our community about mahr. Okay? I'll just tell you. In my own family, this is how I got married. When I got married, you know how much my mahr was? I was married in Jordan, yes. You know how much my mahr was? One, not even golden. One silver dinar. Not even a coin. One silver dinar. That was my mahr. Okay? When my daughter got married, and she got married 2 years ago. We did the same thing too. Her husband was, he was like, I told my husband, I said, you know, I don't think Amr knows that you're not going to ask for a mahr. He said, but I told him. I said, no, I don't think you told him. You weren't clear enough. You really have to make it very clear that, you know, the mahr is going to be the one, this is the custom in my family. Okay, why? The custom in my family is when you're marrying your daughter off to a man, okay, you're gaining a son. So you're gaining into your family. So it's not about the money. But I have to warn you, Islamically speaking, the mahr is the right of the woman. Now let's assume Muna said, my daughter, she said, no, I want to actually have whatever, mahr. That's her right. Okay? And she needs to get it because Islamically it's her right. I cannot say no. My husband cannot say no. Her husband or her fiancé cannot say no. That's her right. And she gets it, all of it. So now, going back to the mahr. When, yeah. So, okay.
Father says, oh, my daughter is college graduate, I spent 50,000 on her, you have to pay me that.
Okay. So you're raising a very good point. Excellent point, and it's something we're seeing in our community, okay? We need to understand that the groom has a budget. The groom has an ability. Maybe the groom cannot pay whatever, you know, the bride's family is asking for or the bride's asking for. That's why it needs to be discussed early. So let's not, you know, get attached and then, you know, connected and then disagree over mahr, okay? When, for the situation you're telling me, I am inviting parents not to ask for a lot of mahr. That's my invitation to you, okay? Make it easy. Why? We're living through a very difficult economic situation. Very difficult economic situation. And ask for mahr if you want to, if this is part of your customs and cultures and you want your daughter to get it, but be reasonable. Maybe, you know, and you know some families, they don't specify the mahr. They say you give whatever you want. And they don't specify. So then the husband gives according to what he or she can, okay? So I'm with you. It's a problem, but we need to work with it. There are other families where they are considering the mahr as the diamond ring. I mean, it depends on what the family's culture or thinking is. So it's going to be very important in those situations to actually have clarity, okay? To sit down and be very clear about financially who's responsible for this, who's responsible for that. Another financial issue that comes up is the wedding, okay? The wedding, the average wedding in the US nowadays is costing how much? It is a lot. Roughly how much? About 30,000. Nowadays, and it varies from one location to another. So they say in Manhattan and New York, it's about 70,000. Okay? In Utah, it's about 15,000. Okay? So it depends on the location. We live in Orange County. We live in a bubble. We live in a very materialistic county, correct? And we are competing. And you see it in the weddings. Who's going to have the grander wedding? Who's going to have the best wedding favor? Who's going to have the best food? Who's going to have the best stage? And let's let go of that. You know, a lot of Muslims are suffering. Wallahi haram. It pains me. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is one of my pet peeves. It pains me when I go into a wedding and I know that there's a lot of money that has been spent in that wedding. And we have people who cannot eat, who are suffering, who are struggling. Let's shift. Let's become real, okay? I know families who actually even go in debt for for the wedding. This is ridiculous, people. Haram. Okay, I know I'm going on one of my tirades. I'm so sorry. But to go on and finish here, this is something else I told you is don't build on a dream. What you see is what you get. If you're not happy with what you're seeing, then don't get married. If you cannot tolerate what you're seeing, don't get married, please. Be real. Okay? Moving on. Okay.
I'm asking, you said the المؤخر دلوقتي في حاجة اسمها مؤخر صداق. هل برضو ده يعتبر من حق العروسة؟
Yeah. So the question is, she's asking about what they call the delayed mahar. And this goes back to also the urf, and the urf is basically the social norms, okay? So every culture, every region has their own idea about al-mu'akhar. So in some cultures, the mu'akhar, or the delayed mahar, is only given to the woman on case of divorce and death. In some cultures, the mu'akhar is a debt, okay, on the husband that has to be paid to the wife, regardless of divorce and regardless of death. So we need to again go back to what I was saying earlier, is be very specific about what do we mean, okay, especially because as I told you in the beginning of the session, we have about 60 to 80 ethnic groups within the American Muslim community, okay, which means we have 60 to 80 different cultures, 60 to 80 different social norms, 60 to 80 different ways of looking at mahar, at looking at marriage, at looking at all of that stuff. We need to be very clear. So when we're sitting and discussing, we need to say, okay, this is, the mahar, I want it, we want it now, or is it going to be delayed? And what does it mean if it's delayed? Is it only when we're divorced or on death, or is it, to be paid? We need to clarify those things, because it's all within the spectrum of the possible options within the Islamic framework.
Can't we go for what Islam says, what the Quran says about that? Muhammad can just...
Yes.
Well, it depends on it depends on the culture, depends on the urf, and it depends on the individual's financial capabilities. The general rule is that لينفق ذو سعة من سعته. So,
which means to spend out of your ability?
Yeah, basically spend based on your, because you can't expect something beyond what one can afford, right? Nor should anyone settle for something, less than what they can. Nor is one forced to. They can to settle for something less than what they really deserve or want.
Yeah.
Right. But the question is, though, I have a question for Sunha. I think people have to be very clear, right? In my opinion, as to, because if it's not defined, I personally in my premarital prep, not necessarily course, but meetings before I do any marriage contract, I let them know that I'm assuming that the marriage is going to take place here in the state of California, in accordance to the marriage laws of the state of California, and in case of any problem or divorce, it's going to be settled also according to the law of the land.
So you're very clear
I'm
about
very clear that's
issue.
What we're getting. Yeah. If you have any other agreement or any other expectations, please spell it out, write it out, right? Come up with a legal document, sign it, notarize it, make sure that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because we need to be very clear on this, because people have different expectations, especially when you have different cultures.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about encouraging them to have a prenuptial if they're not going to follow the California rules for marriage and divorce.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
No, it's again cultural. In some cultures they do it, in some other cultures don't do it. In some cultures there is a need for it, in some cultures there is no need for it. In some cultures it's in case of divorce, in other cultures it's in case of, it's as you put it,
it's a loan.
It's pretty much a due. Basically, you have,
Yeah.
So, but again, whatever is promised to the person, whether you give them an advance or not, it's due once the marriage is consummated, and the person has to give it or pay it or deliver it as soon as possible.
So we can't say it's un-Islamic. If that was what you were trying to ask, we cannot say it's un-Islamic. Why? Because one of the criteria of input into how things are done within Islam is urf, or social norms, as long as the social norms do not collide with what the Quran and Sunnah says. That's why in Egypt, I'm guessing in Egypt there is mu'akhar. Yes. Is this Egypt culture? Okay. Syria, the mu'akhar is not when the divorce happens. Syria is, it's due, like the husband has to pay it to the wife. Okay.
In the same time?
No, he pays the early mahar, okay, at the time of the marriage, and the mu'akhar he pays during the life of the marriage. So yeah, it's not when divorce happens, okay? Yeah, again, it's social norms. This is actually one of the beauties of Islam, that we allow for social norms into, into how we do things. Yeah. Okay, this is an invitation to expanding your horizons and how to get to meet spouses. MSA, MSUs, which is already happening, alhamdulillah. I'm inviting you to do internet matching, okay? And not necessarily only Islamic sites, okay? You can do eHarmony because the pool is larger. However, as I told you before, if you're doing the internet matching, because I see it as a virtual auntie. You know how we used to have the auntie that would go from one family to another and say, oh, I have this daughter, I have this son? Internet matching is a virtual auntie. Very important, extremely important, if you're finding someone through the internet, to do the face-to-face meeting as soon as possible once you find out that the core criteria has been met. So if you find that the core criteria hasn't been met, khalas, you're gonna say, okay, no nasib, it's not working, let's move on. But if the core criteria has been met, don't say to yourself, oh, I want to get to know them 6 months and then I'm gonna meet them. No. Core criteria has been met, you feel some connection, some attraction, get to meet that person maximum a month. I'm dead serious, people here. Please, okay? Let's put effort into this and time and money into this. Why? Because I worry about establishing some emotional connection, and then you meet the person, and then you discover something, and then there's a lot of pain. So let's not do that. Am I clear? Please, no misunderstandings. Okay, so no one is going to leave and say, Sister Noah is saying, oh, let's go and meet people online and spend years getting to know them. Because, I mean, it's interesting what people get from my lectures sometimes. No, don't do that. So, people are meeting in online chat rooms, singles events, which I know all of you young people hate. I heard from you enough. And I don't blame you. Because it's not natural. It's just so awkward and artificial. So we need to find other ways. Yallah. Okay. Personal networking. Like really, if you are ready to get married and you don't have someone in mind, let everyone in your life know that you want to get married. Really, seriously. Let your aunts and uncles know. Let your friends know. Let everybody know. Why? Because then they're going to think of you. And when they meet someone, they go like, I think this will work for this person. So network, okay? Your friends, aunties, don't dismiss the aunties. Because I get that from also the young people. They go, no. I'm not going to meet someone through the auntie. Why? This worked for centuries. It was beautiful. You know what also? The other day in this magazine, eHarmony now has a personal service, okay? So you actually, there's a subset of eHarmony where you have an actual auntie, if you will, I'm going to call them auntie, who actually do the personal search for you, and they do the personal matching for you, and they call you. What does that tell you? That the aunties are important. Because that's the human element. Okay? The machine is not going to be as good as another human being helping you in this process. Please don't dismiss the aunties. Remember what I said. Meet, and then say no. Keep the door open, and then say no. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I wanted to respond to your question when you asked me, how do you know that you are ready for marriage? Which is a great question, is an amazing question. So I was thinking about it. I think the two main criteria to define whether you are ready or not are financial, okay? Is the financial situation for the marriage unit gonna be fine? And different people do it differently. So that doesn't mean that if you're a student, you cannot get married. But if you wanna get married and you're a student, how are you gonna work it out? Is the family gonna support you? Like I know families where we had both the family of the bride, the family of the groom, they both pitched in, supported the young, family until, that young family was independent. But it has to come through communication. I know when my own son, my eldest son, and he was, I think, 19 at the time, and that's usually the peak time when our young brothers ask for marriage. So it's a reality. So when my own son came and he said, I would like to get married, I'm ready to get married. Financially, the situation wasn't going to work. And we were very honest with him because he was still a student. And we said we, as a family, could not support him and his wife. So we said, we wish we could, but we can't. And then also I said to him, when I go and ask for the hand of someone, what am I going to say about you? You haven't established yourself yet. You're still studying. So kind of like, what kind of a dream am I going to say, this is, possibly, how it's going to work out? We have nothing yet. So may Allah bless him. Wallahi, may Allah bless him. He understood. And he said, okay, khalas, we'll wait. And mashallah, he was the first in our, in the kids to get married. He married young once he was done with his undergraduate degree. At that point, I felt, khalas, he has a degree. Okay, I can, with a good, solid heart, go and say, well, my son is graduated. This is his degree. Inshallah, he has, inshallah, Allah will open up the rizq door for him, and he has a earning potential. There are other families who I know, as I told you earlier, they supported the young family. So it depends on the situation. But the financial aspect is a critical aspect of the marriage. So if that is not in place or not figured out, that means we're not ready. Okay? So that's one piece. The other piece is the emotional readiness. And what do I mean by emotional readiness? What I mean by emotional readiness is, am I ready to take on being responsible or being collaborative or being a partner with someone else? Because marriage is about responsibility. We can't just get married and then khalas, forget about the spouse. No. There are responsibilities. We need to be there. We need to connect. We need to communicate. We need to work together. So if a person, whether a female or a male, doesn't feel that they have their emotional readiness to be there for someone else, then they're not ready to be married. Okay? So these are the two that I can think of, Ahmed, the critical, pieces. Did I answer your question? Of course, you have to find the right spouse too. That's another piece. Did I answer your question? Okay, good. Okay. Where's Sheikh Muhammad? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Is it okay if I make a comment instead of a question?
Go ahead.
For the brothers and the sisters, it's important that the brother himself is financially ready to get married instead of relying on the parents to support him. And I think, and again, like with all due respect to the people who have financial support from their parents, it's like the definition of a man is that you can support yourself and support others. I mean, that's just like linguistically, الرجل هو اللي بيوقف على أجره. The man I mean, comes from the word leg in Arabic. So you got to be able to stand on your own legs. And then also, you don't have to be a multimillionaire to get married. And this goes, I guess, with all due respect to my sisters, if you want to marry a man, then you accept him for who he is, and that includes his finances as well. Because just like any other characteristic that you mentioned, Allah Alam is going to change in the future. So you have to accept him for who he is, including his finances. And I think somebody who's willing to say, no, I'm going to support you, me, I'm going to take care of you, then this is a sign of a man, inshallah.
MashaAllah, beautiful. Jazakallah khair. We want more people like you. No, seriously, he's actually reflecting on a group of young men that I hear from. They tell me, my family wants, they tell me, go get married, but I don't want to get married until I can support my wife. Yes, go ahead.
So I'm a CPA, so this is like my passion. So, for the brothers also, when you tell a sister or her family, and with full conviction, obviously, that I'm going to take care of your daughter, this is the point where you see if the girl is willing to accept you for who you are and not for your money. And this is a time where you can determine if she's going to stand with you your entire life, or she's just ta'at mazar. She's just somebody who's materialistic. I know we live in Cali and all these things, but at the end of the day, we stick to our Islamic principles. Allah.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Beautiful message. Okay, where is Sheikh Muhammad? Not here? Okay, because he wanted to share something. So when he comes in, inshallah, bi'Iznillah. Okay, let me see. So okay. This is a proposal for you, if you will, on how to go through the process of getting to know someone. First of all, the point that Ahmed mentioned in the beginning, very astute of him. He asked about how can we know if we're ready. You need to be ready for marriage. And I already explained to you 2 main criteria, emotional readiness and financial readiness. They have to be in place. Marriage is not a game, okay? It's not adventure and fun. It's a lot of work, okay? So we need to be ready. So ready to be married, then you're going to start looking around you for a potential spouse. You're going to show maybe interest in one particular spouse or person around you. Share that, assess the initial compatibility, begin to go through the core criteria we talked about earlier, and see if that person fits your core criteria. I invite you to involve the input of parents, or in the situation where your parents, unfortunately, are not good for input. Sorry, parents, I'm very sorry, because there are some parents who are like that. Make sure you consult with someone else. Okay, if you like a sheikh, if there is a sheikh you like, go consult with that sheikh. If you have an uncle, whoever it is, don't do things on your own. Okay, because the Prophet ﷺ, what did he do? He did shura and everything. He asked his companions their opinions about things. And this marriage is a huge step in your life. It's a big commitment. So get input from people. Okay? So when you're interested in someone, tell whoever, I'm interested in this person. What do you think? What's your input? And don't then become defensive when they give you input you don't like. Listen, because they may have a point. If their concern is not going to impact you, no big deal. Listen and say, yeah, I know about that. That doesn't bother me. I'm going to be okay with that. But they could be highlighting something to you that you have been completely blinded to. So don't do things on your own, please. Either your parents, if you are blessed with parents whom you can have input and dialogue and communication with, or if you don't have that, then find someone else. Okay? Oh, sorry. Next step is to connect. So this step here is even before connecting with that person. Now, you haven't talked yet to that person and told them that you're interested in them. You're just interested, okay? We haven't gone there. You assess the initial compatibility, then you connect with the person. And let them know, okay, I'm interested in you. Are you willing to get to know me for the purpose of marriage and so on? And do the connection in a way that is Halal, of course. Respectful. Okay. I remember one time, one of my girls, she was volunteering at mass convention, and she had this mother come up to her, and she's like, "What's your name?" And my daughter told her her name, and then she's like, "Can I get your phone number so my son can get to know you?" That's not respectful. Okay? That's not respectful. We don't know anything about this son. We're just going to give him her phone number, and we need to do the assess compatibility first, okay? And then open the door for connection. So let's be respectful, okay? Either send someone or, I don't know, for the young brothers, you know what we really like as parents? I'll tell you, as a parent of 4, alhamdulillah. I love it when the young brother is strong and confident and calls the father and says, "I am interested in your daughter. Can I get to know her?" And I love it when the father is open-minded, okay, and saying, "Yes, you may," and he doesn't insist on that they have to first, for example, have to meet him and meet his family and all of that lovely stuff. Make it easy. In a halal way, again, I'm not saying go and meet behind doors. Please don't misunderstand me. So connect, and then also in this process of the initial connection, involve parents or whoever you trust for input, okay? And then do the get to know period. This is before you get engaged. So don't jump into engagement and don't jump into nikah before you get to know the person. Take as much time as you need to get to know the person and feel in your heart that you're comfortable moving forward. Don't get to this stage of public engagement, which I know raises a lot of concerns for parents. They go like, how can they get to know one another? And what if someone sees them at Starbucks? They're not doing anything haram. They're sitting in a public place talking, okay? So you, as a parent, be comfortable. If someone comes to you and say, "Oh, your daughter or your son was there," and yeah, I know. They're actually getting to know one another. I want the parents to be involved. I want the parents to know what's going on. But we need to be open-minded as parents for that to happen. So take as much time as you need, reasonably, I'm coming to you, Mundar, to get to know this person, okay? I'm not saying take a year. A few months is reasonable, okay? If within a few months you haven't really felt comfortable enough to move forward, that means this is not working for you. Cut it off. Don't stay in hanging. Like, I don't know, maybe it will improve, maybe, no. You're wasting your energy, you're closing doors for someone else to come and get to know you. So cut it off. After you're comfortable, move on and do the engagement. So what I mean by engagement is not nikah. I'm not talking about nikah. Nikah meaning like you actually do the religious ceremony where Sheikh Muhammad is saying, "I pronounce you man and wife." No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about basically simply saying, publicly announcing to people that Ahmed and Fatima are now engaged, and they are, inshallah, moving towards marriage. That comes before nikah. It's part of the Islamic framework. But you know what we've done? We've made the nikah the engagement. We've made the religious ceremony the engagement when there's no need to do that. Islam didn't tell us to do that. And why am I saying that? The reason why I'm saying that is I saw enough relationships where people rush into the nikah, and so now they're married. They're husband and wife in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then things don't work out and they break up. It's a divorce. Okay? And after nikah, they can consummate the marriage and no one can say anything to them because that's their right, Islamically, correct? And who's going to be harmed by a nikah that has been consummated and then broken and divorced? The sisters. So I am not not an advocate of using the nikah as an engagement. And I know many people are not going to like my opinion. I know that. It's okay. But I am encouraging you to think of in reinstating the tradition of engagement, and we're going to talk about what are the limits of engagement, because it's not just like, just go have fun. Okay, and then after the engagement, you can do, I don't have the nikah here, but you can do the nikah and the wedding. Now, different people do the nikah and wedding. Some people like to have a long period between nikah and wedding. Some people only like a short period. I personally, I'm being very candid with you, with my own daughter, did not allow them to have a long period between nikah and wedding. It was only 1 month. That's it. Okay. My son, on the other hand, because his wife's family was okay with it, they had a whole year between the nikah and the wedding. And I told my son, I said, you know, you're doing this. I'm not doing this with your own sister. I'm doing this because you asked for it and her family is okay with it. But me, I'm not okay with that. Okay? I'm going to ask, Munder is going to ask, and then we'll come to you. Yes, Munder. Yeah.
So my question is basically because you're emphasizing meeting and the person. So what are those, more specifically, the halal ways to meet people in person? Specifically, does there have to be people like mahram or something, or can you, like, when you're in public, is it fine to meet alone? How does that,
Thank you. Very good question. So let's keep in mind the main criteria for meeting before the nikah. The main, very clear criteria in Islam is what? What is it? Huh? No? No? Khalwa. Exactly. What does khalwa mean? Men and women alone in an area that is not accessible by someone else. Okay? And no one is around them. That is the main criteria. So let's keep that in mind. Okay? That's the foundational piece. So from that, then, different people do it differently, okay? So there are some families who are not comfortable with their children meeting outside in public, even though it's in public, public. There are many people around them. They're not going to do anything. It's in public. So some families are not okay with that. So they insist on the meeting has to be happening, for example, in the daughter's house, in the family's house. And some families insist on someone always being with them at all times. Some families are okay with no one being with them at all times, as long as in the open area in the house and there is someone in the house. So they're not by themselves in the house. Okay? So it's going to boil down to what is the family kind of like comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Yes, but I'll tell you what I'm telling you right now. I know someone's going to be listening to me and they're going to be upset. Because they're going to say, how could you say that? Before nikah, she cannot be with that person unless there is a chaperone at all times. I know there are people who believe that. And I know that people will tell me you're not being Islamic in saying they can meet out in public, as long as it's public, and they have a lot of people around them. And I'm owning my opinion in this. This is my opinion. I just feel it's so important that the young people have space to talk without a third person listening to what they're saying. Okay? I'm sorry. Okay, let's get her question. Kafa, I'm coming to you. Yeah. It matters big time, Sheikh Muhammad. If they're there, it's a different dynamic, seriously. So, okay. Yes, Habibti. Mm-hmm.
I just wanted you to clarify nikah and wedding. I thought you were saying walima is...
Okay, thank you for asking the question. Okay, so nikah, but what I mean by nikah is basically the religious ceremony that Sheikh Muhammad would do. When we have the contract, we have I accept you in marriage and qabiltu and all of that. That's what I'm considering the nikah. The wedding, I'm thinking of different people call it differently. So it could be the walima, it could be the reception, it could be whatever it is that the family is doing to publicize that, you know, khalas, they're moving in together. Okay? Because some people do the nikah, and then there is a period of time, and then they move in together. So the wedding, in my mind, is the announcement that this couple, khalas, is going to live together. Did I answer your question? Because we have so many different words in our community about it. Okay, Kafa? Yes.
And then in...
Yeah. So you're saying in the Muslim majority countries, public is different than in the U.S. In what way?
It depends for a man. If he respects that things in America, well, I mean in Islamic countries, it's the same. But it's come back to the man, everything, you know.
I'm not getting your point, Kafa.
I mean,
sorry.
You know, to respect her in the public when she is there with him, you know, I think it's come back to the man. If it's in Arabic country or in Islamic country or in America, I mean.
I'm trying to understand what's the point about respect?
The public. I mean, public there is different than here, or no? In Islamic country, when the majority is Muslims.
I'm still not getting the point. I mean, I'm so sorry. So are you saying that in Muslim majority countries, being out in public is not acceptable?
Yeah, he is cautious more because it's people, Muslim people there, you know. But in America, everybody do it. Everybody hug. Everybody, you know.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So what you're telling me is that if they are going out in public in a Muslim majority country, okay, they are going to be worried about the people, what are the people going to say about them. And here in the U.S., they may do things because everyone in the U.S. is just being open and liberal. That's your, okay. Exactly. Exactly. So it depends on the man, it depends on the girl. The girl is a gatekeeper. No, I'm dead serious. It's not only about the man. It's about the girl. What is she going to allow to happen? It's in your hands. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't be passive, please. You don't want something to happen, you don't allow it to happen. You make very wise decisions about where you are, who are you meeting, at what time are you meeting them. It's in your hands. Please, it's not only about the brothers, okay? I hope we answered your question, Kafa. And I'm going to say one more thing about the point you're raising, which is an excellent point. If someone wants to do something, they're going to do it wherever they are. Because I'm sure you and I have heard many stories about what's going on in Muslim majority countries, right? They do all sorts of things. So just because they're in a Muslim majority country does not shield or protect. Yes, they need to have a connection with Allah, and we need to empower our children. Our children, we need to empower them to do the right thing. And it doesn't work for us because we're so scared to jail them or imprison them. Doesn't work. Yes. And then, okay. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can I just make one point?
Yes, go ahead.
There's somebody I know who, in every communication that she had with the boy, she always CC'd in her mother. You know, somebody, a responsible figure. And their marriage is so good later on because the whole family respects both parties. And I think having somebody that you trust, that you can include, also test the boy, because I do agree with this sister.
One, which is here, involve the parents or others?
I think somebody that you trust, a third person, because you know, you hear all these horror stories about people can be who you want them to be. Everybody's desperate to get married. But when you have an objective listener or a person, a third person, they can say, you know, why are you behaving like this? Why did he say that? I personally think, because I've had some friends have this happen, that there is hikmah in I agree with, you know, having space, but if both people pick at least one person that they trust, a sensible, mature person, then you get to see how people behave because there are boundaries. And if neither of them can respect those boundaries, it becomes clear, because you don't leave your family to marry somebody. So I'm a great proponent of that after what I've seen happens when people, all the emotions take over and everybody gets involved, and then parents get forced into it, and later on you find out this person wasn't worth it.
That's exactly why we're saying here, before the connect, to assess and involve. And you see why we're saying also involve parents even after the connection. You're absolutely right. Input from other people is important, but you need to be careful about who are you seeking input from. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I wanted to ask you if you could comment on the thought of those who say, you know what, I'm going to get married to someone from back home. That's, I can only click with someone that is from back home. Are you going to cover that, or if not, could you comment on that?
So is it like the young person saying, I'm going to marry someone from back home?
Yes.
Okay. We cannot be, if you will, the judge for how people want to lead their lives, okay? All we can do is highlight the potential problems, okay? If someone was born and raised in the U.S., there might be a cultural gap between this person and someone, from back home. Having said that, my own daughter is married to someone from back home, okay? How did we figure out that it's going to work out? We did what we just sharing with you. They sat together, they talked, and then she said she feels comfortable moving forward with it. So we cannot have a blank statement saying, no, these marriages are out the door. And we cannot say that all of these marriages are going to work, because at the same time, I have seen examples of those marriages failing because the person who came from overseas had a hard time adjusting to the U.S. That's a reality. Adjusting to the U.S. is a process. It's not like that easy. No, it's a completely cultural different. So it's a case by case. It depends on the person. Okay, it depends on the person who's born and raised here and what they're looking for, and if there is, something to connect with. I hope I answered your question. Yeah? Okay.
Mm-hmm. One more question regarding the back home
thing.
When the parents insist on the girl or the boy married from back home, this is the opposite. It's not the boy he wants to or the girl, but the parents wants to.
I know.
So how the kids will be able to say, no, we cannot do that? Because sometimes, as you say, the culture different is so different.
Again, we can't really just have a blanket statement, right? Okay, because again, I give you I didn't force my daughter to marry her husband, for sure. But he was here in the U.S., first of all, okay? So there was a chance for them to get to know one another and decide to move forward. I'm thinking if someone is living here and they're looking to get married to someone who lives, back home, wherever back home is, even though America is our home, we have to figure out how are they going to get to know one another. And we need to make sure that we're giving enough space for that. So I can't really just say one answer about that. It's a case-by-case situation.
Just we can advise the parents.
I'm hoping that the parents who are listening to me are really getting the point about listening to your children and really making sure that they need to be comfortable with whoever they are married to, because that's their life. So you can have your own opinion and share your opinions with your children. By all means do. You are the parent, but let them make the decision. Please. That's my invitation. Yes. Okay. Yes?
How will I know who her dad is, or I'm going to have family here?
So you don't have a family here. So how are you going to know the dad of the bride, you mean?
If I like somebody, I'm going to talk to her.
Excellent.
And we're always talking to each other, and no chance to talk or ask.
So I would recommend you find someone in your community who can make that connection for you. So it could be the sheikh, it could be the imam, it could be one of your friends who know the family. Just find someone. That's how my son got introduced to his wife. We found a common link. We looked and looked and looked, We found a common link, and that's how they connected.
And regarding some of the parents said, oh, our daughters is not getting attention because they wear a hijab. About myself and most of these people who are not going to marry someone without hijab.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah. Yeah.
But of all, we are Muslim, and the one, this is not excuse, so his daughter or her daughter take off her hijab in order to know somebody or to get married.
I agree with you.
I advise all the girls to wear hijab.
Okay.
And follow Islamic rules.
So I am a hijabi myself, so of course I'm going to be biased to hijab. But however, we also need to acknowledge that our sisters who are non-hijabis, they are as good as the hijabis, sometimes even better than the hijabis. So let's not, just discourage or dismiss, someone just because she doesn't wear hijab. There are many beautiful sisters who don't wear hijab. So, okay, let's move on. With this one, I want to emphasize to you to engage the mind before the heart. What I mean by that, again, is the core criteria. I think I bored you to death with the core criteria. So if the core criteria is in place, that means you've already put your mind to it. Then allow yourself, permit yourself to open your heart to start emotionally attaching. Don't get emotionally attached and then assess whether this is going to work for you. Please don't. It's a lot of pain. So don't put yourself in that position. Moving on. Engagement, as I told you, is an Islamic practice according to Sheikh Sayyid Sabiq, again from Fiqh al-Sunnah, the book of Fiqh al-Sunnah. What does it mean, engagement? It means to ask for her hand in marriage in the ways common amongst people. Yani again, we go back to the urf, again, we go back to the social norms. What are the norms? We, as an American Muslim community, we're establishing our own social norms right now. And it's going to be a mixture, a hodgepodge of so many different social norms from all over the world. And that makes our community so rich. Our Muslim community is amazing. There is nowhere else on earth where you have a Muslim community that has 60 to 80 different ethnic groups. Name another country, not the UK, not Europe, the US. We're so rich, and we need to celebrate and embrace our heritage. And marriage, intermarrying from all of these different ethnic groups is going to be essential to our survival and our thriving as a community. So, engagement is an introduction to marriage, meaning again, as we said, you get to know one another and talk and discuss. Again, Sayyid Sabiq says, and Allah has ordained it before committing to the contract of marriage, which is basically nikah. Nikah is the contract. So Allah has ordained engagement so that each of the spouses may get to know the other. Hence undertaking the marriage occurs with understanding and foresight. There is connection, mental, emotional, intellectual connection before we move forward. And again, I'm emphasizing to you, engagement is not a nikah. So there are limits. So what are the limits? Boundaries of boundaries. You're not married, which means no physical touch, simply. Okay? No nikah, no physical touch. So no kissing, no hugging, of course, no sexual acts at all. It's basically, engagement is encouraged so that you can see, just like I've been telling you this whole 3 hours. I want you to see and observe and get to know if this is a person that is a good fit for you. That's why engagement is important. Narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah, when you are engaged to a woman, seek to see from her what would encourage you to marry her. Jabir continued, so when I proposed to a woman from Bani Salama, I used to hide, like I told you, hide in the bushes, to observe her until I saw what made me like her. And this is narrated in Ibn Dawood. another hadith narrated Mughira bin Shu'bah that he proposed to a woman, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked him, "Did you look at her?" And Jabir said, "No." And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Look at her, for that is certain to strengthen your bond." Why am I saying this hadith? Just to highlight to you, this has been part of our tradition from the beginning. All of those ideas that you hear about the separation and you don't see her and you don't talk, not part of our tradition. Okay. Remember, in this section, we're talking about solutions. And again, I'm a therapist, so I'm very biased. I highly encourage you to do premarital counseling. Highly encourage you to spend the money on the premarital counseling. I get many people who call me and they say, "Oh, but that's too expensive." But then they're so much willing to pay, I don't know how many thousands on the dress and on the flowers and on the food. And you are not willing to put money into whether this marriage is going to work out or not. Okay? Not a good idea. Put money where it deserves to be put. Make sure that you are doing everything in your power for this momentous decision in your life. What do we cover in premarital counseling? This is some of the points. We look at personality dynamics, and we're not looking, it's not in theory, it's in session. So when I have a couple, I say, okay, it seems to me like you're more of the pleaser type, and he's more of the controlling type. And I'm not saying that in terms of like to disparage them or say you're wrong or you're right. No. In terms of like, I want you to be aware. I want you to know who you are and what your spouse is, so you go into this marriage with open eyes and you know what you're going to do to overcome these differences. So we cover personality dynamics, communication style and pattern, religiosity level, we go into depth, the balance between family and work, because remember what we said, we have a major shift. Women now want to work. So this comes up in premarital counseling. I force them to think, what are you going to do when the children are here? And sometimes, believe it or not, you think like this is like an important question. They haven't thought about it. That's why premarital counseling is important, because it's not about being swept by your emotions and everything is okay. It's about having a third party face you with reality and tell you, this is the reality of marriage. How are you going to handle it? How are you going to do it? We talk about gender roles. We talk about the financial arrangements. How are they going to support the family? How's the woman going to take care of her? What is she going to do with her money? Is she expected to pitch in and, help? The living situation. We talk about the relations with the extended family, and definitely we talk about children. So this is some of the things we cover in premarital counseling. Weddings, I gave you my spiel already about weddings. The less, the better. Don't waste money on weddings. You deserve the money more than your invitees. Seriously. Take the money, go on a good honeymoon, seriously. Put a down payment for a house. You deserve the money more than the other. Make it as simple as you can. Okay? Use the masjid. I remember one of my, son's friends, their wedding was basically, they did the nikah in the masjid in ICOI, and they had the dinner after the nikah. That was their wedding. So there was no hotel room, there was no white wedding dress, there was no stage. It was very simple. Okay. I encourage you to think and reflect about minimizing wedding expenses. The wedding industry in the US is a $57 billion industry. $57 billion industry. Please don't feed into it.
I know a couple where the father spent something like £40,000 on his son's wedding, and he sent them off. And then his son fell very ill. He has a problem with his kidney. Wow. He lost his house. He lost everything. If he'd saved that 40,000, he could have saved his son.
Seriously, Yani. And please, don't go into debt because of the wedding. Okay, please, Yani. Okay, what else do I want to say about weddings? I think it's enough about weddings. Okay, I'm going to summarize some points, and then I'm going to give you resources, and that's the end for today, inshallah. So in the end, know yourself before you know another. Engage the mind before the heart. Seek input from those around you. Get engaged before you do the nikah. True compatibility is important, so focus on your core criteria. Don't be distracted by the non-essentials. Avoid the wedding trap, and please engage in premarital counseling. Okay? Of course, we said much more than that, but those are kind of like the main highlights that I am hoping you are going to take away from today's session. And the next slide is going to be basically book resources for you, recommended reading about this. So most of you know the book by Munira Azzuddin, Before the Wedding, which is basically a list of questions that you both can engage in to get to know one another at a deeper level. The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, highly recommended. So don't only do the inventory, but also read the book. Things I Wish I'd Known Before We Got Married is a beautiful book, also by Gary Chapman. And Marital Myth Revisited by Dr. Lazarus, which basically forces you to confront your own wrong ideas or misconceptions about what marriage is about. And with that, alhamdulillah, we come to the end. So I want to really extend my appreciation for all of you being here. Jazakumullah khair. The only way we can change the dynamic in our community is through education and through learning and then implementing. So I'm very grateful to see all of you here today. I'm hoping for a better future for the young marriages. Inshallah, you are going to do better than the generations before you, inshallah.